Time management um, is a tricky one for me, but it's one of my favorite things that I talk about with clients all the time, and it's come up. And last uh, week was, or 2 weeks ago, was conflict management, and so that one was a really good one. And so the word management we're going to talk about a little bit, and the word time. So um, before that, we'll go over the benefit here on this slide. Um, it's we're a employee assistance company that helps with services for companies of their employees, and so we service a lot of people. We have lots of hundreds and hundreds of companies that we serve. So with mental health issues, educational classes, crisis line, and of course we're doing phone and video counseling as we speak. So that's a little bit of that. So if you don't have this benefit, it's okay. If you do, then of course you probably know, you're familiar with the benefit. So the thing about time, we'll just get right into it, is I want to make sure my mic was up. Is time's a funny thing. It's a funny thing for me. A couple years ago I went into this word time, all in due time, in someone else's time, in God's time, and time heals all wounds. What does that all mean? And I really did. I kind of went into this of like, okay, what does time mean? And I've taught some time. I mean, I've taught as an educator in my other job and at a university of like, all these different relationship stuff, and like just mental health, just normal stuff of what do we do with our time, how do we manage it, and I talk a lot about value systems and how we use our energy, which is our time. And so in a group setting, I've done this multiple times. I've taught this class, and I started off with, everybody has 24 hours in the day. I don't care where you live. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of situation you're in. We all have something in common. We all have 24 hours in a day, and you just have to, it's like, okay, what does that mean? And what does time really mean to each of us? It's very individual. We all do things differently, and that's okay. But this is just some tips of like, okay, and I get super deep. I'm a deep, like, this isn't about time. This isn't about the shoes. I always call it. I have a story about the shoes. It's not about the shoes. It's about a deeper issue. So hopefully we'll get there in that with you in your soul of like, what does time mean to me? If you've had time ripped from you, if you've had loss and grief and trauma, which everybody has, then that becomes trauma. That time becomes traumatic now, right? And time does not heal. That's a very big myth that we have in society, and we have in like the shame culture of after loss and grief and trauma. So loss and grief counseling, it's like, so what does that mean? Time heals. What does that really mean? I mean, it's different for everybody, but it doesn't heal. So it doesn't heal the brain. It doesn't forget that you had a loss. So you can manage it, you can move through it, but we don't get over it. That's the difference. And there's a good TED Talk on that, and that just came up to me, but I don't have that reference. But so there's a good TED Talk about that. If you want to search it, I'll find the name of it. But so these are like some great quotes about time. I mean, one life, a little gleam of time between two and eternities. I mean, determined never to be idle. No person will have occasion to complain of the want and of time who never loses any. It is wonderful how much may be done if we are always doing. Thomas Jefferson. I mean, so there's like, it's like there's this pressure that comes with time, right? So it's like, oh wait, if we're always doing, so always and never, I don't love it. And there's a couple of these that say always and never, just so you know. I don't like always and never because that's a thinkinger. It's always doing something. No, we don't always have to do anything. We don't always have to be busy. Can we be idle? Absolutely. So I'm going to go through that. So there's some myths that we have about time and pressure and perfectionism and powerless. Those are my 3 P words for this one for sure. And so it depends. So the biggest thing that I talk about when I'm talking about time is value system. So where your values are is with time, energy, and money. So we start with time. I can tell where someone's value system is if I ask them what they do with their time, energy, money. So think about it. What do you do with your time, energy, money? Well, you value something enough that you put money into it. So in a developmental stage, at the beginning, say you're in your 20s and you have a young family and you're spending lots of time, energy, money with a 2-year-old in diapers. And then now, later on in your 40s, late 40s, you are now in a different developmental stage. It's Erickson's 8 stages. And you're putting your time, energy, money into something totally different. It's probably baseball, or because the kid, grew out of his diapers, and now you're traveling all over with baseball tournaments, and you are putting time, energy, money to that because it's important to you. So you've got to look at your values, and we all need to reevaluate our values when we move through a different developmental stage. So 20 to 40, 40 to 65, and 65 plus. Those are the big chunks of the developmental stages, but we have totally different values in those different times. What you were doing at 19, spending your time, energy, money on, you're not going to be doing at 55. You're just not. So, because that's what life is about, right? Time. When we add time to those developmental stages, we do have changes in our values. So that's that. We're going to start with time. I'm going to talk about energy. So time and energy. Money's a different day, right? So this is your balance. So you've seen this in my PowerPoints before. It's my favorite thing. It's like, okay, so if you really want to know where your time, energy, and money goes, you have to keep track of where your balance is. So your physical balance, your mental, your social and emotional and spiritual. So look at this wheel and go, okay, you keep track of your time, energy, and money, and you'll see where you're out of balance really fast. So that's the point of that. You've got to look at this. And so this is really, really important to go, okay, I'm out of balance in emotional, spiritual. I don't feel grounded. I don't take enough time to write down my emotions every day. I don't journal. I don't mind dump. I don't connect spiritually enough. So now I'm going to add a hike into my weekly routine of being grounded, getting spiritual, and having an emotional, which also can be physical, which also can be social if you take someone with you. So now you just hit 3 of your balances that you probably were out of balance. And if you add an hour hike to your week. So a little example. So if mental, that's your work, that's your mental power, that's your learning something new tasks, and your judgment. So if you feel out of balance in that, now with this said, for the last 3 months, we've been going through COVID webinars and different changes, lots of balance and imbalance happening because we have just survived the first month, the second month, the third month. We're into, July's hitting, we'll be into this time period where last 2 weeks ago, I talked about this, and in the anxiety parenting webinar that's on YouTube right now, I talked about this. There is a time frame for acute stress, for an adjustment, and then it turns into post-traumatic. So when we get out of balance over a period of time, it turns into the second part is burnout, and then chronic burnout, and then habitual burnout. That's the levels of burnout. So if we're out of balance, we're going to be burned out. So you're thinking, why are we talking about all this? We're talking about time management. Well, isn't time management balance? It's totally balance. So you have to be balanced in order to have time management. So it's like, is it a chicken egg thing? No, you have to be balanced first to figure out what your value systems are in what you want to put your time into. If it's your family, your values, your work is your value, yourself, all those values. So we're going to talk about that for sure and how to do that in a bit. So here's an example. This is what I do in a group. I've done this dozens of times. Like I said, I have everybody in the group write down, and then they go home and keep track, but write down 168. So everyone has 168 hours in a week. So this is a little example. We have, if you don't keep track of your 168 hours, we have the ability to really do that very easily. We have phones, we have Fitbits, we have, we know how long a movie lasts. Like, we don't lose track of time like we used to as much. Like, we'd look at the sun and say, yeah, it's about 6 o'clock. But now we have the ability to really track our time. And there's apps. It's just like drinking water. It's like your diet, same thing. If you don't keep track of how much water you're actually drinking, how do you know where to start and end? If you don't keep track of your diet, how do you know, if you want to reduce calories or add fats that are good for you? Or if you're not keeping track of your sleep, how in the world do you know if you're getting REM sleep? And that's my first and always question with kids and people I see. How do you sleep? How do you sleep? I want to know how you sleep. Well, I kind of sleep this way. I don't know. Oh, well, then you're going to track it, because you've got to know. And a little Fitbit, one little tip, I have people get $39 little Fitbits, and it will tell you exactly how much you're sleeping and how restless you are, and if you're really getting REM sleep. So incredibly important for your balance. Magnesium, again, is one of the best things to take to help sleep, because we're depleted in that. So there's that's a whole other class about sleep. So super important to track. So here's a little example of a time log, super easy. Activity, start, finish, how much time you spent on it. There's apps that I've had my group members do. One guy's like, I started with hygiene at this time. I forgot to turn it off. So I did hygiene for like 12 hours, and then didn't go back to it. So you got to be diligent and you got to be paying attention. But, and of course, how else do you track time? I'll show you. So this is my, I'm on 2 years of this now. Of course, this is my elephant planner / journal. It is completely full of every single thing I've done for a year. And I keep track in the back of, so this is every book that I've read. And I take notes of the books that I'm listening to. And so all of this, the back of this book has notes of every class I've taught, and then I can just journal in it. And so Gifts of Imperfection, I have by Brene Brown. I have a whole page, second page, I have drawings, I draw in it, deep-rooted issues. So, this is something that is, I like it because at the top, so at the top, of course, it has the goals, but at the top, it has goals for the week, and then successes, and then what I want to do better. So this is just something that you can see weekly, and I just absolutely love it. I'm so biased about writing it down. So important. So that was last year. Then I move on to this one. So I have it open because some of these are my notes from Stephen Covey's book that I'm teaching today. So I have all of my notes on here as I read the book. And I actually keep track of every single thing I do. And if I add something to my day that wasn't in my schedule, I actually put it in on my planner and I cross it out. So I got this done. Oh, I went to the bank. I did this. This is the day that I, because I went to the bank this morning and had to change my debit card over, So, that's just what I did. So that's the day that I did that. So I've got to do this because I did that. I've got to do this week. So if I have a new debit card number, I've got to change everything in my bank accounts. So that's really important. So I have to write that down, that I've got to get to that, because, that's just an added thing that happened. So, because fraud, you don't want anybody to have your number. So I got to get in a whole new number. So that added to my week and that added to my day. And that's an urgent, we're going to go over that. So now I have an urgent list of new things that I've got to do the next 2 days with my bank account, right? So that's just, you got to keep track. Where does your 168 hours go? So this is the other thing. Long story short, when I do this group and I teach this class and we all go through, okay, 49 hours of sleep, average, 50 to 60 hours of work is my average on my people that I do this little intervention with. And we add up all the time. Right? So the basic top 5 of all of us do this. All of us do hygiene, all of us eat, all of us sleep, all of us work, all of us commute usually. So we add up all those things, and every single time I'm anywhere between 52 and 45 to 52 hours left over after we do all those things. That's with people working 60 hours a week sometimes. So we still have 45 hours left over. So that's the challenge. That's the question. So this is a PowerPoint that this slide is one that I've made myself. I made a handout months ago of with this lineup because I was having really trouble with teens and parents mostly, and us, just self-discipline, explaining what self-discipline was, because I have lots of parents going, my teen isn't motivated. Well, I'm not motivated. I'm not motivated to do this. I should exercise more. I should eat better. I should work longer. And I should, should. Those are all thinking errors. That's not healthy. So it's not about motivation. If you can see my screen, if you can't, you'll get this PowerPoint and you'll understand it more. It starts with self-discipline. And this is from a book. It's called The Road Less Traveled. And he talks about balance, self-discipline, and delaying gratification. So delaying gratification is super important, but we have to start with self-discipline. So this goes into right after I gave you my physical, mental, social, and emotional and spiritual balance. The number one thing under self-discipline on this slide is balance. Number one, it's balance. The next thing is we have to have boundaries around that balance, and then we have to have a value, and then we have a higher purpose. So this kind of goes, it starts here and then it goes deep. So a higher purpose is super deep. It's like the root issue is the higher purpose to why you're doing something. If you have a teenager and your goal for them is to make their bed every morning, and I did have a parent that was their, I don't understand why he can't make his bed every morning. I said, he's not motivated to make his bed. So there was no balance, there's no boundaries, and there's no time management. He didn't have a value about making his own bed. And then it's like, okay, so I mean, it's like little things, big things. It doesn't matter. It's all balance. So, and then I'm going to go through boundaries a little bit because we got to do that. And then here's your values, right? And then here's the higher purpose. But the next point of that is delaying gratification. Well, before we can have, after we have self-discipline, we have to delay gratification. So we have to have self-discipline first, then we delay gratification. And we have to say, well, we have to manage our impulses. We have to have pain before pleasure. And I always give this example of our paycheck. If I was paid a year in advance, would I be in Cancun or would I be a really crappy employee? I mean, think about it. I'm if I had no integrity, I'd be in Cancun. And I'd be like, see you later. I've got a year's worth of income. I'll get another job somewhere else when I get back under a different name. Because I don't have, it's like, or I'd be like, yeah, I already got paid. I don't really have to have a reward system because I already got the reward. So it's not going to motivate me to do it again. So this is the lineup, and here's the reward system. So the next thing is reward system. I have found in my practice and with just life, we have a really hard time doing a reward system. Why is that? Do we feel guilty? Do we have shame? If we have self-care? If we say no? Like seriously, back to boundaries. We have a really hard time with us. This is a huge problem. And so I add the reward system in here because a reward system is a healthy distraction from 10 minutes to 2 hours. That's the rule. After 2 hours, like 3 hours of Netflix, 4 hours of working out, 4 hours of, doing something that's gaming, anything that's consistent that it turns into an avoidance. Now it's not a distraction anymore. So now it's an avoidance. Avoidances don't work on the brain. The frontal lobe shut down, and they actually have no motivation to move into anything else because it's just like numbing. Substances do that, avoidances, gaming does that, doing something excessive does that, gambling does that. That's just science. So what happens is your brain starts to avoid, and it shuts this part of the frontal lobes down. That's where we have our reward system. We don't want a reward system anymore. We just want to shut down. So if you're doing an avoidance behavior that you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're not in balance with, so you don't get up and do the laundry for 10 minutes and then go back to watching, a show, then you're now doing an avoidance instead of a distraction. Go do your distractions. I love movies. So you know what happened in 2008, 2009 when we had a recession? And it's sad that we can't go to the movies now as much as we can. We want to right now. But the movies tripled. So in that recession, people wanted to escape their life a little bit. So they went to the movies. It tripled. So it's like it was a cheap way to go avoid for a minute, but it was only 2 hours. So it was a good distraction. Do you see the difference? So it's like, okay, we need to distract. We absolutely have got to distract and calm our brain. I can look at Facebook for 15 minutes or Pinterest, and I can go I started a new Pinterest, a professional like therapy Pinterest, because I just love all the little sayings and handouts. And a lot of them I have, and I use as handouts that are on Pinterest. So lots of Gottman Pinterest. So I go to that and I distract. I just numb out for a minute. And that is a really healthy thing to do. To go, I go to Pinterest and I look at chickens because I have 5 chickens. Thank you very much. And I have 3 baby ones coming, and we're getting I don't know, we're getting 5 eggs a day because we have 5 laying chickens. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so fun to look at Pinterest. Super fun distraction, super fun reward system for me. So so those check marks on the screen, here's reward system. And it says, here's the healthy one. Here's the avoidance one, not healthy. And there's 3 check marks there. Find a reward system. The other example is I tell my group members all the time, I'm like, my reward system, it can be 6 donuts. It can be 6 donuts in a row, or like a whole pack of donuts. And I love donuts. Or my Dr. Pepper. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's my reward system. Or, but it's got to be healthy. I actually have my reward system scheduled in this book. It is scheduled and paid for. So when someone said, I can't get a massage, I can't go to Kohl's, and I can't get my nails done, or I can't, get a pedicure or something, as a reward system, and I have that budgeted and planned, so I had to come up with a new reward system. Okay, so this is what happened with my kiddos that I'm treating. Their reward system was taken away at the end of the year. In May, when we celebrate the whole year that we worked really hard in school, and all that was taken away, most of it, right? So we had to come up with new reward systems. And it was super hard, because the thing is remember the next slide the next part of this is motivation. If you don't have a reward system, your brain does not want to do it again. So we get paid every 2.5 weeks. We do it again because we got a reward system going, right? So your motivation is your willingness, your values, and your outside and internal forces. And then you repeat. You have to, so here's my 5 R's that I made up on the other side. I have R's and P words that I really like. So routine, responsibility, resilience, and then we reward, and then resiliency. Reassurance, reinsurance. So we have to reinsure in that top section of self-discipline with our kids and our family members and our coworkers. Here's the routine. Here's the responsibility. You have a duty, that's self-discipline. And then here's the reassurance. Yes, we have fears. They're scary. They're unseen. But we've got to reassure that self-discipline will get us there. And then we have a reward system. Then we have to just be resilient. We have to keep going. So by the way, I'm just going to mention it. You can look it up on your own. I do not have, I'll add this actually to the handouts, and I have to write it down. So the handouts that I send out with the PowerPoint, I'm going to add this in there. It's super easy handout. It's the 6 stages of change. It's a model from the 60s, and it actually talks about this with time. You go into action for 6 months. You go into maintenance for 6 months to 5 years with a new habit. So that's just, that's a whole other class. It's one of my favorite models, but resiliency is that. You've got to be in action with something new for 6 months. It actually scientifically doesn't happen any other way. You can do a habit for 21 days, and I have 2 of those books, and and things like that. But really for long-term change and doing something new, it takes time. 6 months to 5 years of doing the same thing. And your brain, that doesn't mean that if you relapse, so right after that, after maintenance, it's called relapse. If you relapse and you stop doing that thing, then doesn't mean that, you're out. After 5 years, you're good. It doesn't work that way either. So we'll look up that. So these are just some things about right here. Let me move so I can see my screen. So these are just a little bit more tips on the 5 R's. The routine. So here's a tip to do a routine. New traditions, new play, new creative time together. We've had to come up with that with COVID. Responsibility, love and logics, choices and power, equal thinking, words, not fighting words. Responsibility in any kind of way, but this is Love and Logics, of course, is a parenting book. So that's just an example of how to produce responsible kids, responsibility for yourself. We always have to have choices. We have to have thinking words, not fighting words, and we have to have power. So we've got to stay in responsibility with that. Reassurance, we have to model that, let's instill hope, right? In reward system, and then resilience. So that's that. So the next part of, I think you were talking a little bit when I came back on after I crashed, about like self-care too. Balance, self-care, this all has to come into play first. Remember, self-discipline has to come in first. So this is part of the energy part. So I teach a lot about cleaning up your environment. So if my desk is a total wreck, if my kitchen table is a total wreck, just no judgment. Say my kitchen table is full of crap and stacked up stuff. Is it really doable to be in your balance of diet and eating dinner at home in the right kitchen area? It doesn't work. So I have people do 10-minute interventions of cleaning up your environment. So I made this little thing. Here's the example of different areas of your environment: your spiritual, your nature, your financial, your work and your network, your home, and your relationships. So pick one. Do something every day for 10 minutes. Now, what that looks like is cleaning it up, is organizing. So if you need to clean out a drawer, clean out a drawer. 10 minutes. It just starts with 10 minutes. And the thing is about this is you time it. You set the timer for 10 minutes. You do something for 10 minutes. Some of you will go nuts. I've had people like, I can't just do 10 minutes of the dishes. I just can't. I said, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And then go on to the next thing, because then we're breaking it up and making it more simple to get everything done in your balance, you know. So you're doing a little bit of this, you're doing a little bit of that. Just do the best you can. But here's yourself in the middle. Yourself is most important in your physical body, on your emotions. So if you have a messy kitchen, are you really going to want to make dinner? If you've got a table that you can't sit down as a family, you know, that, you know, you don't have room, or you don't have, you know, the table's a mess, it's going to be really difficult for you to sit down and have a meal. So financial, clean it up, get organized with scheduling when you pay your bills. You also, in my conflict management class a couple weeks ago, it talked about how to have hot topic time. So you schedule hot topic time and talk about finances with your family, with your relationships. You talk about hot topics if you need to. How can we get more organized in this? Well, then it's scheduled 30 minutes every week. It's scheduled. And then that just helps it be a safe time, hopefully, and you have, you know, a time to talk about that thing. So does anybody have any questions about that? Put it in the chat. Like, how do you clean up your environment? And then we go into Covey. So really quick, this is my 7 Habits of Highly Effective People little guidebook. I took this class and was certified in it at UVU 10 years ago exactly. And I just absolutely love this book. Having a mission statement, having goals, having a schedule. So this is habit 3, putting first things first. The 4 quadrants make sense to me. I have that in this PowerPoint too. This is my old copy of this. You know, you can find this anywhere. And all the habits are very, very important. He also just has first things first, and that's referenced in the back of this PowerPoint too. So this is a couple quotes. The challenge is not to manage time, but to manage ourselves. So true. I don't want to manage time. I want to manage my value system. I want to manage myself, and I've done a dang good job at it, honestly. And I'm not just to brag, but I used to be a multitasker. You know, if anybody knows me, and if you heard me before, I mean, I went to school later. I started school at 33, and it took me 13 straight years to finish, because I have 4,000 hours of clinical work after I'm done with my grad school. So it was another 3 years on top of that of doing clinical work before you're fully licensed, and 1 more test. So I studied for 9 months again on top, because I failed it several times, to get that final license. And then I'm a certified family life educator. So that was my undergrad. So that took me 5 straight years, an extra year to get my undergrad. And I was not smart. I started school, you know, way later. And I always worked 3 jobs. And I raised my kids, and then I had foster kids in the middle of that. But it's like, you know, I used Covey's habits, and I have put it into place in my life. And you take those 5 years of maintenance, because that's managing, it's maintenance. That 6 stages of change, the last part is you're in maintenance. You're maintaining your goals, you're maintaining your life, you're maintaining your values, and you stick to them. And that's really hard to have boundaries around that. But the environment, this next quote, you fashion out of your thoughts, your beliefs, and your ideals. Your philosophy is the only climate that you will ever live in. I live in that climate. I hope other people can. We are doing a shift in America right now. Huge shift. Live in your philosophy and live in your climate, and you will have peace. You won't have to fear. You know, I do fear for my children and my children's children. I do. It's a scary place, but we're living in fear, or we're not, right? So I can fear for others, and but I don't live in fear. The key is not spending time, but investing in it. I invest in myself with my value systems. It's scheduled, like I said, Super nice to go get a massage again. We get some of those things back, our reward system. So this is the first, this is habit 3, but these are the 2 things that you have to do first. You have to ask these 2 questions. What single thing that you should be doing regularly to make a change in your life? Because remember, you've already done your value, you got your value systems. And I think I'll go over that a little bit more. So you have to figure out what that change is, because you've calculated your time and your energy and your money, and you're like, you know what, this is the biggest change I need to do. Just pick one, pick a tiny one. It's not a big one, but it's the biggest change that you need in your life. Then what things in your professional or personal life would lead to similar results? That's really deep. I mean, I don't even, it's like, whoa, so what things in your professional life would lead to similar results? So here's the thing that you need to do, the biggest change you need to make. And I'm always about physical. So your diet, your sleep, and your energy is so important first. And then what would you do in your personal or professional life that would lead to similar results? So, and here's the quadrants I've talked about. So here's the quadrants of Covey. So habit 3 has these quadrants, and they go over this. So just know, I'm going to kind of skip over this fast, that what these are. And I really like this little picture that I found, because it's a little bit deeper. So it has activities and then results. So it gives you a lot more ideas. So here's the result of quadrant 2, where you want to stay. You do want to be in quadrant 2 a lot more. It's important, but it's not urgent. But quadrant 1, of course, is that crisis, that immediate, like when I had to go to the bank. That was on my list this morning that wasn't supposed to be on my list. So I had to go into the bank, get a new credit. That was an urgent, because my debit card was frozen. So that was an urgent crisis that I had to take care of. So that just bumped up something else, right? So you go and do that. But here's the urgent, or not urgent and important. So you prevent, you prepare, you recognize good activities, and you plan. You plan for something. That's really important to be in there. You've got a plan. So results, you have vision, balance, few crises. So think of the results on here. It says few crises, you have balance and vision. What wouldn't you want more than those 3 things? Now, quadrant 4, to skip down to that, that's the mundane stuff that we just numb out to, which we're doing right now because we're living in fear response brain. So we're dependent on others, and we are time wasting, and we just numb out with avoidant activities. So quadrant 4 is where we do our avoidant activities, and they're not necessary. So just watch that. And then here's the 6 types of boundaries. Because now that we know what we're doing, we want to change. The next part has to be boundaries. And a lot, once again, in self-discipline, we're still in self-discipline section, we don't know how to put up boundaries. So it's really funny to me that as I was looking at boundaries, I thought, well, we've got to do boundaries. And this is one of my favorite things to teach on, is boundaries. And so, and here it is, I pulled up my 6 types of boundaries, and here it is, 3 of them out of the 6 have to do with time, energy, and money. So it all goes together. All the time it does. Everything I correlate things, I'm like, here we go. Here's the 6 types of boundaries: emotional, material, and time. So pick one of those, put a boundary around it. Remember, if your balance is out of balance with emotional, then you put a boundary around your emotional feelings, your personal feelings, and limit what that looks like. Don't allow people to step all over you emotionally, because it just doesn't help your balance. So that's it on that one. 10 ways to do boundaries. Be assertive. Know your value system. Know your secondary emotion. We have to know, be present. Give yourself permission. Go by patterns, not potential. That's one of my favorite things. If you want to get used, go by potential instead of patterns. This person has potential. Go by patterns. Know your self-care needs. Know your values have been crossed. Just know when they've been crossed. Know your rights. Number 10, repeat. So here's your boundary. Here's your line, this little nice picture of a fence. It's like, here's my fence. It's not a wall. So people are like, I have lots of walls up. And I said, no, you don't. It's so funny when I can correlate this with someone that says, I just have a lot of walls up. I think I'm really shut down because I do this and this and this. And someone says, oh, you have a lot of walls up. I said, that was not a wall at all. That was called a boundary. You put up a boundary. Here's the line in the sand. Here's the fence. It wasn't a wall. So next time someone says, you know, you've got a lot of walls up, check in with yourself and say, I don't think so. I think those are just called boundaries. We call them walls, just, you know, pet peeve of mine. So FYI, I found this information very helpful. So this is going to help your kids when they start school again, when you're doing tasks for work, when we're so in our midbrain with fear and all this stuff that's going on in our universe right now. So this is just a fun little cognitive tasks. You want to do 8 to 12. Your mental tasks, calculating, that would be math. Short-term memory, you want to do from 6 to 10. This is why this is so good in the morning. We do really well in the morning. I do really well of thinking when I'm in the shower, right? Too much information. I love just the mornings, love. And it's like reviewing for tests, 6 to 10 a.m. That's when you want short-term memory. Long-term memory, 1 to 4. Isn't this interesting? And then long-term memory tasks that are like memorizing and applicating is best in the afternoon. I love doing therapy in the afternoon because I do, you know, like I do better in the afternoon with that, you know, but so that's just a little bit of FYIs. And here's the tips and recaps so we can get to questions since we had a little blowout with my internet in the middle. So this is super important. I've got to go over a couple of these so you understand. The first one on this is prioritize and task to A, B, and C. I always, I guess I'm a little biased about this. So everything you do as a schedule, so daily and weekly. So this is the prioritizing. This gets an A, B, or C. This is immediate. This is quadrant 1, okay? Quadrant 2 is B. And then C is quadrant 3. Super easy. I've made that up, you know, so I've just put those together. So it's like C is like, this can be done next week or this month. You can put this is a month thing. So you put you spend 10 minutes on your planner every morning or you know, 15 minutes every week even, and you plan out your week and you put A, B, and C by it. This has to be done this week. All the bills need to be paid. That has to be done. That is in your quadrant 1 or 2. And B is quadrant 2. C is like 3. 4 is a waste of time. You don't want to be in avoidant behaviors. Eliminate perfectionism. We get really down on ourselves and put pressure on ourselves that we're supposed to do everything. Not helpful. Reward, time out, or time it. So do your reward system, and then the next one's time it. So time it. 10-minute activities, 10-minute, 2-hour, something in between there, and then take a break. So I have egg timers for kids. I have alarm systems in their room, so they don't have to have a phone in their room, and they can watch the time. Okay. So set deadlines. Don't multitask. Set routines. Schedule it, or it won't happen. Covey has always said, if you don't schedule it, it won't happen. Now, if something else comes up, guess what I do? After the fact, I put it on my planner because, you know, it can be scheduled 5 minutes before it's done. It's new. It's okay. So track your balance, clean up your environment, make your time your boss. So totally make your time your boss. And so I tell kids in therapy that the time is your boss. The time is your boss. It's not me. It's not your mom. It's not your teacher. It's not anybody. So the time is your boss. So it takes the pressure off of everybody else. So when you're parenting, totally do that. Like, I'm sorry, it's 6 o'clock. Too bad, the boss says it's 6 o'clock. And that means it's dinner time and you have to turn off your video game. So easier said than done. Okay, questions. There's some Covey books, and I'll put The Road Less Traveled back there. Let's see, I don't have a copy in here in my office. So,
So we have just a couple, but as I'm starting to read these, please send them in the chat if you would like me to ask them. So the first one is, I would like to know the title of the TED Talk. I'm going through grief right now and having a hard time feeling like I'm feeling like it's taking too long to get over it.
okay. And yes, and that's the word that we use, and she uses that. I will find that. I cannot remember her name. It's a brilliant TED Talk after she lost her husband. She's wrote a book. I will find it, and I will put it in this reference before Heather sends out the whole PowerPoint to you. I'll put it in the reference page on this page that I'm on right now. But yeah, the word, it's taken me too long to get over it. That's where we go wrong with that thinking error, right? You're not going to get over it, but you manage it, and you can. It depends on how many rocks you want in your pack, how long you want to carry things. But then that's just grief and loss counseling, for sure. You got to do some grief and loss trauma counseling.
Okay. And then someone said, Carol has referenced classes that she's teaching weekly or from time to time. Are these available to anyone? So Carol does monthly parenting workshops on different topics. But lately we've been doing so many workshops each week that Carol's just done a ton. So I'm sure she'll be doing some more in the future. But yeah, those parenting ones are monthly. And all of her previous ones are going to be on YouTube by Friday. So just watch for that.
Yeah, we'll give you the link to that website, or to the YouTube. And next week is burnout. Really, I mean, we didn't plan this. Once again, next week's class is on burnout. Well, I'm sorry, but we're in a burnout situation from all of this. If you feel a little irritable and burned out, then definitely watch that next week's tips for that.
Okay, so this next one's pretty long, so I haven't read through it yet, so I might stumble over it. So just bear with me. So this one says, I am conflicted. I have my job in Salt Lake City, and it has the virus and riots there. I'm currently at my hometown and have been here for over a month to get away from the viruses, riots, and the aftershocks from the earthquakes we had a while back. I'm a member of the Ute tribe, and our tribe does not want the tribal members to travel to Salt Lake because of the virus. And so on the reservation, sorry, I have to scroll down. On the reservation here, we don't have any virus cases. I want to be safe and feel if I go back to Salt Lake to my job, and if I come back, and I don't want to bring back the virus to my family if I contract it. I don't want to quit my job. I have only been there for a year. So I think they're just feeling stuck on.
Yes, very stuck. Very powerless. And this is what happens with time management and our value systems, is you're conflicting in your brain with your value system. I need my food, shelter, and water. That's your job. I need to be safe. Here's I need health insurance. I need this benefit. And we're trying to figure out this crazy environment that we're living in, but we're trying to stay safe. So here's your time management stuff of like, how do I manage my time, and how do I manage my value system that sends me back into work or not? So yes, so that's fear. That's just fear-based. And when we are in fear-based stuff, we have a really hard time conflicting with making decisions. So do the best you can. Mind dump that. Get real logical about your pros and cons. How you can go back to work. Yeah, we can't lose our jobs. So how do I manage that? How do I ask for my needs to be met? How do I have boundaries around that? How do I go in 2 days a week? There's lots of options that you just need to really mind dump about and write them down, and then go, okay, this matches up with my environment and my value system. So you know your values and know your higher purpose. Your higher purpose of going back into work is because you got to keep your job, right? So yeah, really conflicting, really things that we would never have to make these decisions on anytime, prior. I don't know, but in my lifetime, it's like, wow, we've got so many things going on. So just do the best you can in writing some of that down and getting help.
Okay. And then the last one's just more of a comment, and you can elaborate on it. But I found it a little strange that pleasant activities were relegated to only quadrant 4. Certainly they can become avoidant behaviors, but they are needed for rewards too.
Okay. So pleasurable activities, like, so pleasurable activities and having fun is not a waste of time and should be scheduled in. So if it says pleasurable activities, that's not really what, let me see. So it says pleasant activities. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. We have to have balance, whatever that looks like, as your reward system. So if it said don't do reward systems in quadrant 4, that's no. It means the time wasters. It means, like, I would think, like, more just the avoidance activities. So pleasant, like more like gaming or doing something that is being destructive for more than 2 hours. So yeah, don't like it. So scratch that one off.
All right, that's all the questions. So, while you were fixing your internet, we had a lot of discussion about possible future workshops, and I think a couple of them you might be interested in. So, I'll talk to you about that after I'm gonna call you. But,
always good.
Yep.
Give me a subject, right? And whatever's needed. And we have to listen to you guys, and I listen to, we listen to our clients, and but it's like, what is really needed? What is our kids and our spouses and our coworkers struggling with? Like, man, do we hear it, right? But you guys always can send in those ideas and email me or Heather after you watch a couple of these. If it's something that's not already been done on YouTube, you're like, oh, we've missed this one, or we need more on that one. So especially, like, boundaries and assertiveness, boundary class. I don't know. We have too many. I have a parenting in boundaries and parenting class that we did. But if you need more of just regular boundary stuff, stuff like that.
All right, so that's all we've got for now. So, like I said, I will hopefully get this sent out this afternoon, but if not, it could be tomorrow morning. So just watch for that, and feel free to go to our website and register for any future workshops. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks so much.